Well, what a tidy little week that was as I welcome you inside the parlour. 12 goals for, 1 allowed, 6 points out of 6 in the Premier League, and 1 foot into the Europa Conference League proper. By the way, I don't mind us being stripped all in white from head to toe. I wouldn't mind if this scheme was what we wore at Liverpool. I always felt as a player, it's easier in your peripheral vision to catch that white out of the corner of your eye. But I'll talk more fashion a little bit later on during the show. In the meantime, let's get to it. Burnley 1, Aston Villa 3. The entire Villa family and a lot of the football community in general was very touched by a recent tweet from somebody I only know as Idaho Villain, an expat living in the States, huge Villa fan, who has had a terrible, terrible time of late. First having to watch the love of his life succumb to serious illness, only for himself to then have to suffer the same fate. Essentially, he tweeted that the Burnley match was very likely going to be the last one that he would ever see alive. And John McGinn found out, of course, as the team captain and sent a video to Idaho Villain saying that the win was dedicated to him. I read that tweet as being a very gentle reminder and, frankly, a generous gift to the rest of us, because I'm as guilty as anyone complaining about dumb things, this and that. Why is this happening to us? Why don't we have that? Why don't we have this? You know, and then you read a tweet from someone who is literally confronting their own mortality, confronting the end. And we have the ability to live and breathe and watch Villa either live in person or on television. And so I want to raise a toast to Idaho Villain and thank him for that very gentle and dignified inspiration. Just before we get to the Burnley stuff, as you probably know, the third kit dropped prior to the weekend. I have put a link to the kit bag store in the description below, 25% off with a promo code on the printed versions of those jerseys. And I know a lot of people are going to buy them just because that's what we do, and I'm as guilty as anyone. And I understand the strategy behind third kits. It's to make more money and to put out something that's totally different from the primary or the secondary strip or anything you've put out before. And I realize that this strip was probably in development and design before Chris Heck arrived at Aston Villa, and he will 100% for certain have a say in how these are rolled out next year. But can we please tell some kind of story here that actually connects this kit to Aston Villa specifically? Give me some kind of a yarn of how it's like inspired by the old Holy Trinity stand with the stained glass windows or something. Something authentic that actually does connect the club to the garment. And you know, if you do that and you're creative in that process, you may actually sell more. Otherwise, it just looks like a cash grab. Zoe Shemmons was on hand at Turf Moor to take this fine photo as we welcome you to the Holy Trinity Show, the 3 key issues or moments that defined Burnley 1, Aston Villa 3, starting with the key numbers. We are now among the league leaders in XG after our 3 Premier League games. I wanted to look at ground duels won because we were dominant in that regard. Funny, our passing accuracy was less than Burnley, but we had more possession. They had almost 100 more passes than we did. But look at that. Ground duels, 60% controlled by Villa. Very satisfying away day with 5 big chances created. Odd how the away team has strangely dominated this fixture, although Burnley in its entirety in the Premier League has only won once in the month of August. So it was looking pretty good for us. And you know, if the Burnley players were as deadly accurate with the football on goal as some of their fans are with projectiles and bricks being thrown at the Aston Villa team bus, well, they may survive the Premier League yet. Now, I'm not what you would call a fashion expert, and I do find it odd that footballers and ex-footballers are so particular about what they wear that Vincent Kompany came up with this ensemble for the sidelines. the rather formalish blazer jacket over a droopy collared white shirt and then the ball cap. I think he needs some style advice. This is not an ugly dude who's done so well in revitalizing Burnley Football Club and bringing them to the Premier League, but I think he needs a little bit of help because this is the look of somebody who's going straight back down to the championship. Big issue. Pau Torres is a footballer. His stats were impressive. 94% pass accuracy, 60% on accurate long balls, 2 of which went into the final third. And I think those numbers are going to continue to improve as he gets Premier League confidence underneath him. But here's a guy who could also take the ball and drive into the middle third, which he did on 2 or 3 occasions on Sunday. This is a fluid, languid, elegant footballer, and his whole shtick is to play in a way that is preventative towards defensive actions. On the actionable defensive moments, the 1v1s, we've seen that perhaps maybe he needs to be a little bit more aggressive at times. You know, he didn't give away 1 penalty last year with Villarreal, and now we sort of know why, because on the goal, he gets rolled quite comfortably, and he'll probably be annoyed with himself that he wasn't tighter or a little bit more aggressive. And we've seen other examples. You know, at Newcastle, he overshot the runway on one coming into midfield, and that led to a goal. And in the preseason against Brentford, on their 2-0 goal, he was a little bit passive in the defending. But again, that's not really his game. He can improve in that regard, but he's not that kind of defender the way Carlos Conza and Mings might be. He's kind of like a midfielder who's playing at center back. Irritating issue. People who continually Photoshop Diego Carlos's head on my body. Stop it. By the way, how solid was he again? Building back, better, stronger, faster. He is the type of defender who seems to enjoy those defensive actions like sliding tackles and desperation blocks and aerial duels. So in that respect, those two complement each other very well. Another key issue was the performance of Boubacar Kamara. Now, I may have my claret-colored glasses on, and Douglas Luiz is so dependable, we almost don't even need to mention him week upon week. But it feels to me as though Boubacar Kamara is actually gaining in influence week upon week. He had a major role in the 2-0 goal because he somehow managed to maintain possession doing a 360-degree pivot. His numbers were spectacular. He won 8 of 12 of his ground duels, 92% pass completion percentage, won all 3 of his tackles, created 2 big chances, and had 9 recoveries. Those are man of the match like numbers. And I think all of us expected Boubacar Kamara to be this classic number 6 type defensive-oriented midfielder. But what is becoming apparent is he is much, much more than that. He is becoming a two-way midfielder. And while we're on the subject of players who heavily influenced the game, can we talk about the skipper, John McGinn, who could have easily been the number 1 factor in why Villa overturned Burnley, because it was his perfectly played ball into the channel ahead of Ollie Watkins. Like he pulled out the pitching wedge and just dropped it in for Watkins to chase onto that led to the 1-0 goal. Then he has to fight off an opponent who's literally water skiing by holding on to McGinn's jersey. Great advantage played by the referee. But McGinn keeps his balance, releases Luca Dean. Suddenly, it's 1-3. I'm positive that Unai Emery took John McGinn into his crazy professor's laboratory, rebooted his hard drive, and then changed his career mode setting to Beast. Because we now have this very unique and effective two-way type footballer who, in the critical moments on Sunday, delivered. A what-if moment. What if Robin Olsen didn't pounce to bat aside that shot only about 2 minutes before we scored the 3-1 goal? The guy is virtually a spectator in this game, had very little to do, and he came up with the goods when he needed it. Yes, still a little bit scary with the ball at his feet, but you'd have to imagine he's gaining in confidence and will probably get the start on Thursday. Big moment, the introduction of Nicolo Zaniolo. This looks to be a very intriguing footballer because, first of all, he's a big unit, a handful, and it looks like he enjoys getting about into people's business. And within moments of being introduced, he almost pulls off the John Duran and scores. Now, in my humble opinion, he absolutely had to square that ball to Ollie Watkins for the tap-in because Watkins was in the better position to score at that moment. And any coach of any value will say the exact same thing. Had he made that charge and then laid it on a plate for Ollie Watkins to score his first of the year, he would have ingratiated himself with his teammates and his manager incredibly. However, the best goal scorers in the world become that way because they are greedy, hungry, and confident enough to take the responsibility. And his left foot just sounds good. Do you remember the one where he stole the ball upfield and then he let one fly? You could hear how clean that strike was. There's an X factor to this lad. Big issue. And this is becoming a major overarching theme that is so obvious to me, but it is this team's discipline. We are so good, both in and out of possession, at being patient. You notice we're just not diving in recklessly anymore to try to win the ball back. We're closing our positions, but then we're holding and we're being patient. And when you do that over a significant period of time, it's funny how the opposing team ends up just giving the ball back to you, unless, of course, it's Manchester City or other elite teams. Obviously, these players know exactly what positions to take on the field based on the video analysis, based on what the manager tells them, and then based on incorporating both of those in the training sessions. The sign of true professionals in the game, the ones that go on to have long and successful careers, they're the ones that are willing to onboard information and then employ it. And keep in mind, Aston Villa changes that information so regularly because Unai Emery has a different game plan for every single opponent. So it's hard, all that video, all that work on the training ground. But this is the exciting aspect of Aston Villa. Yes, obviously we needed the leader in Emery to build it all. But it feels like we've got a team of guys who are eager to learn and grow. They believe in their manager. They have validation that it's working. And when an entire team of people are willing to learn and grow, your club's probably going to grow a lot. But the thing that we Aston Villa fans should be really excited about is that it appears we could play three different ways. We could play the total control and possession game, which we've seen lots of already, particularly at home and sometimes on the road. We can play on the counter, as we saw at Newcastle, with 2 or 3 very good breaks in that game. And we could press high and press through midfield and try to play the transition game. And the key is knowing the triggers or the cues on when to do each. But it seems like they do know, and they'll only get better at it with time and repetition. Just before we get to the 3 key issues or moments that defined the Burnley match, so much happening with 24/7 services right now. Major work at Wigan Station where the roof was worked on over the weekend. And between myself, Paul Handsaker, and his team, we're actually planning a little bit of a renovation of 24/7 services as a brand. You know, here's a company that specializes in helping you repair, replace, beautify your home or office. Maybe it's time to tweak a few things and make their brand kind of sexy, which would include a new website, thus making it easier for you to connect with them. Now, if you are thinking ahead to fall and winter and you need some of those preparation projects done, I have included all the numbers to their local offices in the description of this video. Big issue number 3, flexible formation. I saw the reactions to the team news on social media, and most of it was aimed squarely at why it appeared we had 5 defenders, that's what a lot of people thought, or why Matt Cash was playing in the role he played in. But honestly, if you're still at this stage second-guessing Unai Emery on anything, it's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? And the fact that Unai Emery played Matt Cash when Leon Bailey was available and obviously a natural in that position, did pretty well against Hibernian, well, that was inspired. And I don't think it's like Unai Emery goes, well, hey, it's Matt Cash's 100th game at Aston Villa. Let's give him a run up front and see what he can do. And then for Cash to actually deliver is quite incredible, frankly. Cash said afterwards, "I'll play anywhere for this football club right now, and the manager always knows exactly how the game is going to go, and that's why everybody is so bought in right now." In his previous 99 games, Matt Cash scored a total of 4 goals. On Sunday, he scores 2, including the winner, and they weren't straightforward. On the first one, he has to remain committed to the run, and he has to believe that Ollie Watkins is going to get that ball across. What a ball, by the way. Again, not on the score sheet, Ollie Watkins, but a major contributor to that goal. And I'm happy for the two of them because they're best of mates. They arrived at the club at the same time. And then the second one, well, he had a lot to do here, and he hit it so clean for a player who's not really known as a finisher. And Unai Emery knew that Matt Cash played a right winger's role at Nottingham Forest, and he deployed him in that role in pre-season against Brentford, scored an extremely similar goal. But still, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in those technical meetings to understand the rationale behind that thinking. Why Cash? Why on this day? And lo and behold, he comes up with the goods. And then he finishes the game playing at left back. And while Matt Cash was patrolling higher up the right side of the park, did Ezri Konsa look at all uncomfortable playing the farthest right of a back four? On the contrary, it looked like he'd been playing there for a long time and his numbers were good. He won all 5 of his ground duels and he played 6 penetrating balls into the front third. Another example of players who are tactically versatile and formationally flexible. Big issue number 2, Diaby delivers. For the 4th straight game, I'm sitting there watching, what is this cat going to do next? Because we know he's a speed merchant, we know he's an exceptional elite dribbler of the football, and we know his passing statistics are very good as well. I thought his value to us was going to be as a breakaway scorer, somebody who plays on the flanks and just beats everybody for pace, kind of like in the preseason game against Fulham. But instead, what's happened is he has become an integral connector to the whole thing, right in the middle of the park, despite his smaller stature. And like I said, in the flexible formations point, he could still go and play on either flank and be that out-and-out winger type. On the 2-0 goal, it's the timing of the release, the timing of the overlapping run. It's the player without the ball that makes the play. And sure enough, he makes the overlap, cuts it back perfectly, and it's 2-0 there. And then on the insurance marker at 3-1, watch how he bends his run to that soft area of the penalty area where false 9s and 10s just pop up like he knew it was going to happen before it actually did. And he slithers the ball home along the ground. So you add that goal to the volley at Newcastle in week 1. And how about the save Jordan Pickford made to deny him of another volley against Everton? I think it's safe to say we're already seeing dividends on this investment, and he is absolutely justifying his hype and the fee when they signed him. And don't forget, he set up Ollie Watkins twice in the goal mouth for big chances. I've said a million times on this show, if you want to truly upgrade your squad and add a difference maker, you're going to have to pay for it, and pay for it we did. But at a time in this game when it was feeling a little bit ropey, up steps the difference maker to settle the points. And even though we are so early in the season, I'm looking at this going, how fast has this guy adapted to the Premier League and to this team? I think part of that comes down to really good scouting and partially understanding the role that best suits him in the team. What a pickup. We may actually look at this pickup and say he was a bargain. And the number 1 big issue or moment that defined Burnley 1, Aston Villa 3, early exploits. We've played 4 games this season, and in all 4 of them, we've scored within the first 20 minutes. In fact, both of Matt Cash's goals on Sunday were scored inside 20 minutes. And this is crucial to our philosophy and how we want to play a measured and controlled, possession-oriented game, especially away from home. As I said after Hibs, if you're the home side and you're losing, you can't just stand there and watch a team possess the ball and play it around. You have to go try to get it back, and that's when our philosophy can adjust to taking advantage of turnovers or small mistakes, and you become a little bit more transitional, and you try to exploit the areas of the park that are being vacated by a side that is chasing the game. Obviously, away from home, when you score first, you shut the crowd down, and that was definitely the case at Turf Moor. It was quiet there right up until halftime, and when you shut off the adrenaline supply to the home side, that makes a difference. Not to mention, you can hear the traveling support far more clearly, and that was pretty obvious after Burnley scored. The difference in energy within the stadium and within the squad, it was night and day. That was the only time that I felt this result was hanging in the balance. But isn't it fascinating how diverse our opening goals have been? Maybe it's off a set piece, maybe it's off a counter or a transitional moment, maybe it's a 19-pass sequence. Early doors yet. Very encouraging, though. Well, there he is, the man that has given us these stats to savor as we review all the subcategories we've been following over the last couple of years of the show, and now an improved away record, our first away win of the season. Watkins still set to get off the mark, but Diaby has 2. We're 6 out of 6 against the bottom 6, and our first and second half plus minus are now in the positive ledger. Next up, the second leg of the Europa Conference League playoff, and I'm sad to report there will be no Lee Johnson at Villa Park. Aston Villa has broken Lee Johnson, and I'll be very curious to see if he revives his career after the pasting he took at Easter Road and then the result the following weekend. Listen, I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail onto this. I expect there's going to be rotation, probably more than the first leg, because let's be perfectly honest, Hibs is not coming to Villa Park and winning 6-0. We're in for a very busy and challenging fixture list ahead of us, starting with Hibs at Villa Park on Thursday, but it does feel like the Newcastle result and performance is far more distanced in the past, doesn't it? And speaking of which, what a game at St. James's Park on Sunday, which could have ramifications for our trip to Anfield next week, given that Virgil van Dijk was sent off. And I wonder if they'll appeal that red card. Didn't really matter to them, though, did it? That's going to be a really big, proper test. And of course, by Friday, we'll know which group we're in the Europa Conference League, and the summer transfer window will have slammed shut. Until that time, savor the last remnants of the summer. And as always, up the mighty Villa.